All right, I'm here with Jack Morrall. He just graduated from Hopkinton High School. He's a three-sport athlete. Jack plays basketball, baseball, and football. He's going to be playing football in college, actually, but we're going to start with basketball first. And he just won the Male Athlete of the Year at our school.
Yeah, Drew. Thanks for having me on. It's really a pleasure. Basketball. My freshman year, I played JV, and I was solely JV for the start of that season until there were actually some injuries, and I had the pleasure to swing up practice. I obviously didn't get much time because boys basketball in Hopkinton is one of the most
It's the biggest sport in town, probably. Yeah.
yeah,
So,
no, it's one of the most competitive, sports in our school. And I had never really been a basketball player per se. I was just sort of athletic enough to, be able to play. I never really had the shot or the drive. And that pretty much caused me to be a predominantly a defensive player. Um, so that was a little discouraging, but um, I had fun in my time playing basketball. The competitiveness was, you know, always something that I loved. Um, and then sophomore year, I made varsity, which was a surprise to me because the team was still very competitive. I mean, when I was a sophomore, that senior class, I believe it was just ridiculous. They had Kevin Newton Delgado, they had Luke Reedy, Shepard Murdo, all those guys, and I didn't necessarily have the talent to play with them, but um, again, I just had that ability to play defense, and you know, and I just worked hard, and that paid off. Um, and yeah, that year was it was pretty good. I definitely got a lot better, and I enjoyed my time. And then I actually my junior year, I didn't play basketball. Um, I was more focused on lifting and getting more prepared for football. And you know, I do regret not playing that year because that team was very good, and um, as soon as I stopped, I was just like, dang, I really missed this because I was going back and forth. I was like, do I really love this sport, or is it a sport that I can take off and be happy with that result? And yeah.
so out of your experience with that situation, what's your advice to others for dealing with a tough decision in sports when you're young, like in high school, and trying to weigh, do I do this or do I do that?
Yeah, so I just think, I I just go through your options. I mean, I just lay it flat on the floor and just be like, okay, this is what I can do. This is also what I can do. Um, in my case, I should have realized how short high school sports are. In the moment, it seems like, oh, it's going to be a really long season. It's what is it, three to 4 months. It's going to be, it's not going to be a good time. But being a graduate now, and not being able to play basketball anymore at that competitive level, it's just like, oh man, like, I kind of regret it. So I just, I just think in retrospect, like, what will I miss this? Is this something that, is important to me? Yeah.
All right. Can you talk a little bit about your senior season and what that meant to you?
Yeah. So obviously I took that junior year off. Coming back senior year, I was very welcomed by the team, and I really felt as though I had a place on that team. Again, I wasn't I wasn't the shooter or the driver. I was more of the they would just put me on the best player, and I just play him as as tough as I could, just, annoy him pretty much. Um, and I enjoyed that role. I think it was a lot of fun, and obviously doesn't show up on the stat sheet as much as you'd get out of like a shooter,
Mhm.
but I definitely get some of that recognition, and that was,
Yeah.
that was really nice.
Yeah. So we got to fly in here.
Yeah, it's
Yeah, I think that people understand that, but anyway, I think it was overall pretty good. I mean, I remember watching you throughout the season, and some guys would have big nights where they'd be putting up numbers. But I think what was pretty remarkable about you was you wouldn't, complain, and you were always a humble player out there. And I also think that you did a lot of stuff, like you said, that doesn't show up on the stat sheet. And that was important to the team. And, you were okay with that. Like you said, you accepted that role. I think your speed was a big part of it, just
Mm.
being able to play defensively, because I know you're very fast. Um, so I think that's cool that, you're able to. The cool thing about sports to me is that, you might not have a certain skill or certain ability, but there's so many different skills needed that if you just have a couple of them, you can put it together and play a position.
Exactly.
You want to move on to baseball?
Yeah, sounds good.
All right. Let's talk about do you want to talk about being a kid and growing up and like in the game or high school?
Yeah, I mean, I can start off when I was really young. So, like many, I started my baseball career, playing t-ball. And my dad was a huge baseball player. He loved it, so he was trying to get me to play as much baseball, you know, as he could, and I loved it. It was my favorite sport. And, progressing through minors and majors, that all those different stages of baseball, it continued to be my favorite sport, and I loved every second of it.
Um, when you get to high school, there's definitely a shift that you can feel between like how often you practice and how intense the practices are. What's your advice for somebody out there who is entering high school, middle school, and has been, like you said, playing a sport that they really enjoy, but when it gets tougher, how to deal with that?
Yeah, so I mean, first you just have to understand how much of a commitment high school sports are. It's a big leap. You know it goes from more so of like a leisure activity to you know like competition, and it really means something. um so I just understand you know what it takes to be a high school athlete. That goes for all sports. You just have to understand the time commitment, and you have to. I mean, everyone preaches academics first, and that's important. So you just need to understand that the balance of time, and that's something that I definitely could have done better. Um, but I survived. So just academics first. Um, and if you know you can't put academics before sports, then you know sports obviously have to put academics before that.
Yeah, something that I found really interesting to learn about when I talked to, a few different coaches and different players is that every team sort of has a culture. Like if you have a team that they go in there and they're just, if the coach is not there, forget about it. It's a wreck. They're screwing around and not doing anything. And then you have other teams that have a really good culture in place. And if coach isn't there, they're still running a great practice and holding each other accountable. I think a certain part of that can be in different schools where about academics and focusing on academics, like you were just talking about, and like getting stuff done. Like, nobody's perfect. I think we've all had those nights where it's 11 o'clock and we got a paper due the next day and we're struggling to get that done.
Mhm.
But I think it's cool to think about, having a culture and working on that, regardless if that's, working on your crafts, working on sports, or being well balanced between, academics and sports and using your time wisely. Do you think that Hopkinton has that culture, or would you like to see a stronger culture come in at some point?
No, I definitely think that's a culture that, Hopkinton carries. I think it's a culture that it's always carried. Um, Hopkinton's always been very successful at sports, but we've always been, we've always scored very high on, state testing. And I think the coaches understand too that academics always takes priority over, athletics. Um, I think that's a really important part of life, just, you know, understanding priorities.
Yeah, I'd agree, especially with Hopkinton. I think specifically that's all true. Now, if you're done with baseball, you want to talk about shifting positions? That might be interesting.
Oh yeah. So when obviously I first started playing baseball, I was a catcher and I caught all the way until my freshman year. Um, and then my junior year, because we lost our sophomore year due to the pandemic. Um, so my junior year, um, I shifted to center field. Um, a very great catcher, Armin Lalagian, came in, and he was just outstanding. And you know we had a hole in the outfield, and we needed to fill that. So coach moved me to center field, and you know I I met that transition with a lot of effort, and um, I really think it paid off. There was a bit of a learning curve, obviously, just learning like first step back and you know two hands to catch the ball and just reading the ball in general. But I caught on pretty quick, and I did very well, and I loved it. I love center field, and I would actually prefer center field over catching, just because you get to make all the plays, the flashy plays. So
Yeah, I mean, I think that like we were talking a bit earlier with basketball, like if you're good at, you don't have to be good at everything, but if you're good at a certain skill, that can help.
mhm.
With you, it's throwing the ball, and not only is it to be able to play, but you can play multiple positions if you have a strong arm. Um, yeah, so I think that's kind of cool. Over the course of 2 seasons, you only made one error as a starting center fielder.
Yeah,
That's pretty impressive. I mean, there's a lot of kids out there who make a ton of errors, in a stretch of the season, but to go 2 seasons with only one error, I think that's really impressive.
thank you.
Yeah.
Appreciate that.
All right, football.
Football. So football's the big one. Football has has been my sport in high school. It's been my love. Um, and my freshman year, um, playing for the Hillsborough Deering Hopkinton co-op program. It I was like every other freshman. I didn't get a huge amount of time in the beginning of the season, and especially to someone who doesn't really sit all that much, it was a little discouraging. Um, but I worked hard in practice, and I think the coaches saw that, and by the end of the season, I had a starting job at outside linebacker, and yeah, it, yeah, and then sophomore year, that was really when I took off. Um, I got a starting running back job, and I continued to play outside linebacker, and we were in D3 at that time, and we had a very good team. Um, I forget what we finished, but we were one of the better teams in the playoffs, and I think we were knocked out in the semifinals.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
I remember that. I know that your sophomore year, you had a very good starting running back, Colby Quiet. Do you want to talk about the example he set and how that helped you learn?
Yeah, no, Colby Quiet was just very representative of a very hard worker. He was just a complete powerhouse, and I had always looked up to him because he was the stud of Hopkinton basically. Because he was good at, he was very good at lacrosse too, and that's what he's playing over there at
Keene State, yeah.
Yeah, so I basically tried to model myself after him as much as I could, just in terms of, running and tackling and just general play style of, just playing your head off. And um, obviously, you know, I understood my role when I was playing behind Colby. Obviously, there are multiple running backs in the offense we ran, and Colby was the workhorse, and I was that kind of wild card back that you know would take all of the or take some of the pressure off of Colby. Um, and so yeah, I knew my place, and I didn't complain, and I was rewarded for it.
Yeah, junior year and senior year. What do you want to say about that?
Yeah, so junior year was, man, I can't even put it into words. It really, it did everything for me. I was the year that Colby Quiet left, and I was left at that that starting running back spot. And I had Michael Oberheim, very, very good quarterback, and I owe a lot of my success to him. Um, that year, we moved up to D2, and we had the shortened season due to the pandemic, obviously. And I finished with over 1,000 all-purpose yards. And I think that was the most in the state for the regular season. And we made the playoffs, and we were knocked out in the first round. No, not the first round, the second round by Bo. But I was being utilized to my potential. I was catching the ball, I was running the ball. A lot of that offense revolved around me, and it really, in terms of like recruiting, it did loads for me, because it showed all my talents and my abilities, and yeah.
So now you got accepted, debates, and you're gonna go play in college. And you just did your senior season this fall, and you're making the transition from high school to college. What do you want to say about that?
Yeah, I mean, it's really surreal. I mean, the whole, being recruited by Bates and eventually getting accepted. Sorry. It was never a given. It was something that I had to work very hard for, both, athletically and academically. You obviously, Bates is a D3 program, and you can't get into a school like that without, without having the grades. And I'd also like to, for any of you who want to get recruited, talk to your coach. I know some coaches aren't, incredibly willing to help, but some are. Sorry. Sorry, I'm a little under the weather.
You're good.
I swear it's not good. But yeah, Coach Wood, my football coach, was incredibly helpful in that process, and he really helped me make that connection, and that's what I've carried from that, is that connections are very important, and people are naturally willing to help if you ask them. People are great resources, so always be willing to reach out and to ask for a helping hand, and usually they'll give it to you.
All right. Where do you see yourself after college? What do you want to be doing for a career?
Yeah, so I mean, like many, I don't have my mind completely made up right now. Sorry,
You're good, Jim.
losing my voice. But that's okay. I'm interested in psychology, and I can definitely see myself as like a therapist. That's something I've looked into, but I've also looked into studying economics. And the beauty of Bates is that it's a liberal arts school, which means it's very diverse education, and you don't necessarily have to declare a major right away. You can take a ton of different classes that fits your interests. So
That's really cool. I think that's something to consider when other people are seeking school, when they get recruited. But you have anything else to add other than that?
I do not.
All right. Well, thank you, Jack.
All right, thank you.